August 16th, 2017 at 9 a.m. in room 2450 at the Grant Sawyer State Office Building, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Before I do a roll call, I would like to welcome the newest member of the Nevada Athletic Commission, Sandra Morgan. Welcome. Very happy to have you with us. So we'll now do a roll call. Stacy Alonso.
Here.
Skip Avancino.
Here.
Daniel Carpenter.
Here.
Sandra Morgan.
Present.
Great, and I am here too. We'll now go through, before we get into any public comment, we'll go through disclosures. Mr. Morgan?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to items 12, 13, and 14, I'm currently the Director of External Affairs for AT&T Nevada, and my company donated an amount to the Richard Steele Foundation. However, I don't believe that the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my situation would be materially affected by this relationship, and it's not a clear conflict of interest, and I will be voting on items 12, 13, and 14, but I just wanted to make that disclosure.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes, sir. Similarly, many years ago, Richard Steele was my corner man in past fights that I've had, and it's been a long time, and I intend to vote on these items also. We have no pecuniary relationship whatsoever for this.
And those are items?
E12, 13, 14, I believe.
Thank you. Commissioner Alonso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have disclosures to make on agenda items, consent agenda 4, 8, and 18, new business 1 and 7. I'm employed by Station Casinos as an executive vice president. Station Casinos is a subsidiary of Red Rock Resorts, which is a publicly traded company. Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta are officers, directors, and controlling shareholders of Red Rock Resorts. Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta also have a passive minority ownership interest in Zuffa. Their ownership interests are non-voting, and neither of them are members of the board of managers of Zuffa, nor do they have any kind of control over or involvement with day-to-day operations. I'm not employed by Zuffa and have no peculiar interest in Zuffa or the other.
Great, thank you. I will now open the meeting for any public comment in the room. Do we have any public comment in the room? Great, seeing nobody coming forward. Naira, do we have any public comment on the phone?
Conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Do we have any public comment on the phone? Great, thank you.
Hello, good morning. This is Jerry Thomas representing Michael Snyder. Would you like me to speak at this time?
Representing Mr. Snyder. Okay, then we will get to you when we call your item. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great, no public comments.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
We'll move on to item number D for the minutes. Look for a motion to approve the minutes of July 31st, 2017.
I move to approve the minutes of meeting of July 31st, 2017, Mr. Chairman.
Great, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
One second.
Great, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Now moving on to item E, we will go with this consent agenda, but we will remove item 15.
I move for approval, Mr. Chairman, of the consent agenda items E1 through 18, with the exception of items, was it 15?
Yes, sir.
Item 15.
Great, do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great, I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Great, motion passes unanimously. Great, moving on to new business. Executive Director Bennett, item number 1, selection of officials and setting of fees to work the August 26, 2017 at T-Mobile Arena for a special event between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Conor McGregor. Sir.
Thank you, Chairman. If it's okay with you, I will read all of the officials for the 3 fights, as well as the ringside physicians for the sake of brevity.
That is okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, for the Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor fight, referees to be considered: Robert Byrd, Vic Draculich, Russell Mora, Jay Nady, and Tony Weeks. Judges to be considered: Adelaide Byrd, Eric Cheek, Bert Clemens, Robert Hoyle, Patricia Morse-Jarman, Dave Moretti, Glenn Trowbridge, Max DeLuca from California, Glenn Feldman, Connecticut, John McKay, New York, Don Trella, Connecticut, Steve Weisfeld, New Jersey, Guido Cavalieri from Italy, and Benoit Roussel from Canada. The ringside physicians to be considered are Doctors Brown, Capana, Coates, Heflin, Lee, Leone, Mazzarano, Obert, Anthony Rosaroli, Dr. Watson, and Zavala. Fees to be paid: $25,000 for the referee and $20,000 for the judges.
Great, any recommendations?
Recommendation for the referee would be Robert Byrd.
Okay, and the judges?
And for the judges, Bert Clements, Dave Moretti, and Guido Cavalieri.
Great, and the doctors?
The lead doctor, I would recommend Dr. Rosaroli. The second, Dr. Capana. And the third, Dr. Coates and Dr. Watson.
May I ask,
Yes, please.
Mr. Bennett, any objections by either camp or these proposed individuals?
Not to my knowledge.
I would
We
also
had
note
conversations, but I didn't have any objections.
we do have the camps in the room too, Commissioner Avancino. Is there any objection from either side on the recommendations of the executive director?
No.
See no objections from the two parties. Are there any other comments or questions from commissioners?
No, sir.
Okay, great. Then I would look for a motion to approve the executive director's recommendation.
I make a motion.
Great, we have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
I second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, motion passes unanimously. F, new business, item 2, selection officials and setting of fees to work the August 26, 2017 at T-Mobile Arena for an IBF Super Featherweight title between Gervonta Davis and Francisco Fonseca. Executive Director Bennett, your recommendations, please.
Yes, sir. Referee recommended Russell Mora. Judges recommended Adelaide Byrd, Glenn Trowbridge, and Glenn Feldman from Connecticut. Fees to be paid: $2,500 for the referee, $2,000 for the judges, and the ringside physicians are the same.
Great, and you check this with the camps as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions from any of the commission? Great, no questions. Look for a motion for approval of the executive director's recommendations on item F2.
Move to approve the executive director's recommendations on item 2.
Great, I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, motion passes unanimously. Item 3, selection of officials and setting of fees to work the August 26, 2017 event at the T-Mobile Arena for the WBA light heavyweight title between Johannes Bandau-Jack and Nathan Clevering. Executive Director Bennett.
Yes, referee recommended Tony Weeks. Judges recommended Patricia Morse-Jarman, Max DeLuca from California, and Don Trella from Connecticut. Fees to be paid: $2,500 for the referee and $2,000 for the judges. Ringside physicians are the same, sir.
Okay, great. And you check this with the camps as well?
That's correct, Chairman.
Great. Any questions from any commissioners?
What were the three judges, Chairman, or Executive Director? The three judges?
Three judges were Patricia Morse-Jarman, Don Trella from Connecticut, and Max DeLuca from California.
Okay, any questions from any of the commission on the recommendations of the executive director? Hearing none, look for a motion for approval.
I move for approval, Mr. Chairman, of this item.
Great, and a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go for it.
Great, motion passes unanimously. Item 4, selection of officials and setting of fees to work the September 8th, 2017 event at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino for the WBC Super Middleweight title between David Benavidez, and Ronald Gabriel. Executive Director Bennett?
Yes, recommendation for the referee would be Jay Nady, and judges to be recommended is Adelaide Bird, Dave Moretti, and Glenn Trowbridge. Fees to be paid, it's to be determined. Ringside physicians to be considered, Dr. Stephen Brown, Al Capana, Jay Coates, Joseph Heflin, Raimondo Leone, Vicky Mazzarano, Anthony Rosaroli, David Watson. I would recommend the lead to be Anthony Rosaroli, second, Dr. Stephen Brown, and thirds, Dr. Raimondo Leone and Vicky Mazzarano.
Okay, I guess I would look for, if there's no questions, look for, well, your recommendations first, sorry. Did you make, no?
No.
You listed, you gave me the list, I need to, now go ahead, give me the recommendations.
Okay. Recommendation for the referees, Jay Nady. Judges, Adelaide Bird, Dave Moretti, and Glenn Trowbridge.
And then you gave me the doctors?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, my mind was someplace else.
I may move for approval, Mr. Chairman, of this slate of...
I would just like to add a note on the fees. Is it okay with the commission if we approve this with the executive director and myself overseeing that these are appropriate for the... Okay, great. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to new business, item number 5. Hearing on the application by Triple G Promotion LLC for a promoter's license. We have a representative in the room for that, for the promotion? Come on forward, please. Good morning, sir. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, it's Tom Loeffler.
Great, good morning. So, in looking at the application, commissioners...
There's also a representative on the line as well, sir.
Okay, and your name, sir, for the record?
Ronald DiNicola, legal counsel for GGG Promotion.
Okay, great. Okay, fellow commissioners, after reviewing the application, are there any questions for the applicant?
I just wanted to welcome you to Nevada, and I looked it over. I didn't see anything that particular that stood out, and I wish you all the best success and a healthy career for Triple G, and hopefully he has more fights in Nevada.
Thank you, Commissioner Carpenter. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Executive Director Bennett, you have reviewed, of course, the financials as well. Mr. Bennett, you feel satisfactory with what has been presented to you from the standpoint of protection of those associated with this spouse?
Yes, I do, Commissioner Evans.
Are there any other questions from any other commissioners for the applicant? I have one question. In going through the application, and I'm going to, in looking at the capital deposit that was made into the company, do we have any evidence or proof of this? Usually, we're looking for a little more detail on the financials, and if I've missed that, let me know. But this is really just written in word as a statement in the application. We have no proof of funds, we have no bank statements, we have no financial records or balance sheet from a certified accountant on the application. Has anybody seen that, or am I missing that?
Morning, Chairman. This is Naira Phillips. I'm the recording secretary for this meeting. I'm also the management analyst in the office. I've been corresponding with one of the representatives who's been providing me with this paperwork, and that paperwork that you're asking about is being forwarded to us. So I can provide that to you if that's satisfactory after this meeting with the writers in the office.
Okay, I'm comfortable with what's in the written word, as long as I can see the proof, and if that will be provided, then I don't have any problem moving forward with this item, but I will need to see that before the fight.
I think the motion should contain that, certainly that provision that you have an opportunity to review the location of that capital and that is going to be dedicated for this purpose.
Yes, okay. That's the only concern that I have. Is that an obligation that you can meet prior to your event, sir?
Yes, that's no problem, Chairman.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, if there are no other questions for the applicant, then I would look for a motion.
I'll motion.
You?
Motion to, I'll motion to agree to for granite with the caveat that they short proof of financial backing.
Great, so we have a motion for approval pending the proof that I've requested on the financials and the source of funds, and that they are actually in the company's bank.
And I would just add to that language that prior to the fight taking place.
Yes. Okay, great. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second it, Mr. Chairman. I want to be precisely clear that that $300,000 is going to be somewhere where you have an opportunity to see that it's dedicated to this purpose.
Yes.
I know you'll take care of that, so I second it.
I will. I appreciate the responsibility that you've bestowed upon me. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Motion passes unanimously. Welcome to Nevada. We're happy to have your event here. We're happy to have Triple G fighting in Nevada. I look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mornell. We're looking forward to his first fight here in Nevada. He's fought all over the world, and he's really looking forward to this fight September 16th, and hopefully we'll have many more here in the state of Nevada.
It's still amazing to me how he fought all over the world and never got to the best city in the world, but I'm glad
Yeah.
He saved the best for last.
hopefully many more.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Now moving on to new business item number 6, hearing on a disciplinary complaint, or in the alternative, hearing on a proposed adjudication agreement for boxer Michael Schneider. Good morning, Deputy Attorney General Bateman. How are you?
Good morning, Chairman. How are you?
I'm doing great. I understand that you have reached an agreement with the parties.
I have, Chairman, and I apologize to the Commission for the late submission of the proposed adjudication agreement. The negotiations went quite long, and we reached the agreement late yesterday. And so I did forward that proposed agreement to all the commissioners. I believe that Naira has provided you all with a copy. And just for a quick record, this case involves the use of anabolic steroids, namely the use of testosterone and or prednisone, that resulted in the contested testing with a high or elevated testosterone to epitestosterone ratio. That result was confirmed through testing through Smurtle, which confirmed not only the levels, but also the fact that this wasn't a naturally occurring incident within the contestant's body, but rather was the result of using an external substance. Looking back on the Commission's general sentencing of contestants who used an anabolic steroid on a first-time offense, we followed that as our guideline, which is 12 months for a period of ineligibility, as well as a 20% fine from his purse figure, testing for clean drug test 30, 15, and 3 days out from his next contest should he elect to fight in the state of Nevada again, paying attorney's fees, and notably making sure that the result of the contest, which he won, is changed from that win to a no contest. Those are standard recommendations that I would have made if this matter had gone to a disciplinary hearing. It fits within our new regulations, as well as the executive director's history of recommendations on anabolic steroid use. So with that, I'll submit it with Mr. Thomas on the line. It is my understanding that Mr. Snyder, after signing this agreement, he's actually starting work on an oil rig, and so he could not be available to appear at the hearing. However, Mr. Thomas, his manager, is on the phone to make those representations and confirm that Mr. Snyder agreed to this agreement.
Okay, so before we get to Mr. Thomas, just to confirm, this adjudication agreement rides with past practice, our regulations, and there's no deviations from that.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions for the Deputy Attorney General Bateman from any of the commissioners?
Was this the individual whose father called in last time? The opponent's father called in?
No, Commissioner Carpenter, I believe that was a prior contestant.
That was a prior one.
Okay, I guess we would go to the phone for Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, sir, Commissioners, Director. How are you?
In looking at the agreement, I would For the sake of brevity, unless you have anything to add, I would assume, based on your client's signature on the document, that he is in agreement with this settlement agreement.
Yes, sir, he is, and I might take just a moment to just extend his thoughts and to the commission. He wants to extend his apologies and our apologies for what had happened. Unfortunately, as I mentioned prior to this, he was not used to this type of testing and was on a prescription for that testosterone gel. He promises this will not happen again, and again extends his apologies and mine as well for not knowing that that rule was in place in the state of Nevada. Unfortunately, we haven't had any fighters participate in bouts in Nevada for a few years, so we just weren't aware of that rule, to be honest. But we'll make sure it won't happen again.
Okay, I would encourage you that all the information is on our website, and at any time you can call the Nevada State Athletic Commission office for a full copy of our regs and our anti-doping policies.
Absolutely, we will do that. And again, thank you very much. And we hope that after the suspension period is over, Mike Snyder will be appearing on events next year at some point in Nevada.
Okay, great. Well, we will keep our eye out for that. I appreciate that. Are there
Great.
any other questions from the commissioners for Mr. Thomas? Hang on. Okay, great. I would look for a motion of the approval of item number 6, the adjudication agreement of Mr. Michael Snyder.
I would move for approval of the adjudication agreement between Michael Snyder and the Executive Director and the State Athletic Commission, and authorizing the Executive Director to execute the adjudication agreement.
Great, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, motion passes unanimously. Okay, great. Moving on to item F7, hearing on the request for a waiver of requirements regarding the glove weights by contestants Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Conor McGregor for their scheduled bout August 26, 2017. If it pleases the commission, since we did receive this request jointly from both fighters, I would like to have representation from both fighters come forward and explain to us why they are seeking this waiver of our regulations. And then if there is no other party that wishes to speak on this, then I would like to close the meeting, and then we can deliberate as a group. I believe we've got a lot of perspective here at the commission, and I'd like to get all of yours perspective on the request that's being put in front of us. Is that okay with everybody? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, sounds good. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Can I get your gentleman's name for the record, please?
Mr. Chairman, Michael Mersch on behalf of Conor McGregor.
How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
And John Horner, we're on behalf of Floyd Mayweather Jr.
Okay. Do you guys want to flip a coin for who's going to go first?
I've drawn a lot.
Okay, go ahead.
So thank you, first of all, for entertaining our proposal. We know it's as unique as the fight itself, and something that we take very seriously. We have two terrific fighters. One, the best boxer of his generation, the other, the best MMA fighter of his generation. We're looking to have the best contest they can on August 26th. In that regard, they have approached us, each fighter, and has asked that we come before the commission and ask that this change be considered in the glove weight. We feel that it is something that will help them give the best show, give the best display of their talents, and something that they believe is in the best interest of everyone involved in this event. That being said, I rely on the papers that we submitted, and we'll see if you have any questions as we move forward. Mr. Mayweather obviously has been advised by us in terms of what the regulation is, what it requires to be changed, what the risks are, the rewards, etc. Mr. Mayweather is on board with that and asks that...
Mr. Horner, can you elaborate a little more than just submitting this two-paragraph letter? You're asking us to consider revising a rule that has been long-standing.
It is a long-standing rule, sir, and honestly, it's a special event. It's something that these two boxers, one Mayweather, who's fought 46 of his 49 bouts at 147 pounds, Mr. McGregor is fighting his first bout in boxing. But Mr. Mayweather is very accustomed to using 8-ounce gloves in a bout. He has used 10-ounce gloves 3 times in his 154-pound bouts. He understands the difference. He believes that the 8-ounce gloves are the best ones for him, not only to contest the bout, but boxing being a sport of self-defense, to defend himself. That his tactics and what he wants to do in the ring would be best served using the 8-ounce gloves themselves, and asks that that be considered. We note that the regulations themselves speak to a cutoff of 147 pounds as the weight at which both boxers can agree and not present a case in front of the commission for this kind of an exception. We missed that by 1 weight class. We have to live with that. That's where the line was drawn. However, I think if we look at this in terms of safety and what goes on, there's a weight that boxers weigh in, and there's a weight that boxers fight at. And when you look at welterweights, 147-pound fighters who weigh in, they're stepping in the ring with those 8-ounce gloves on, weighing anywhere between 150 and 170 pounds. The same as Mr. Mayweather and Mr. McGregor will do on the 26th.
What do you expect him to weigh in at?
Mr. Mayweather, his usual 150 pounds, and he'll be 150 pounds on the night. That's his best weight. There's no reason to put on extra weight.
Are you familiar with the evolution of the rule that we have?
I am not totally familiar with the evolution of it itself. I was a little surprised to see that it went down to 135 pounds, that being requiring the 10-ounce gloves. I've obviously worked with Mr. Bennett in the past on these types of issues, and in addition to the glove safety issues which came up after the Maidana fight. So obviously we realize that the health and safety of the boxers are what's paramount here, and what the commission is looking to preserve, but also to ensure that the contestants are comfortable in performing their tasks on the night and can do their best and perform their best.
So you are aware of the primary concern of the commission as the health and safety of both of our contestants, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely, sir, and that's why I brought up the example of welterweight fights all over the world are contested. People weigh in at 147 pounds. I recently did a fight in England with Errol Spence and his opponent, and they did the IBF second day weigh-in. They weighed in at 147 pounds. The next morning at 9 a.m., they were 156.8 each. They walked into the ring at 170 pounds. They contested those bouts with 8-ounce gloves, and pretty much every welterweight bout in the world is contested with those 8-ounce gloves at that weight, and they're done safely. We believe that'll be done here as well.
I'll reserve.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Horno?
Mr. Mersch.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, first of all, thank you. Just to give you some background, on behalf of Mr. McGregor, first of all, to give some background, Mr. McGregor has been training nonstop for this fight basically since last February. And at that entire time, he's been prepared to proceed forward wearing 10-ounce gloves. That being said, the entirety of his professional MMA career, he's used to wearing 4-ounce gloves. So on behalf of Mr. McGregor, we have absolutely no objection to that. We don't believe there's any significant detriment to health and safety, which of course I understand is the most important thing. I agree with Commissioner Avancino. That's always our primary concern as well. We, again, based on the fact that we do have 2 of the premier athletes, premier combat sports professionals in the world asking for this, I think in their professional determination, they believe that it's safe for them to do that. And so we are certainly supportive of that. Just to give a little more color, this started as a somewhat of a challenge by Mr. Mayweather over social media that perhaps the match would be better contested with 8-ounce gloves. Again, we had been preparing the entire time in 10-ounce gloves, but have immediately after receiving that accepted and have no concerns whatsoever about contesting this match with 8-ounce gloves. So happy to answer any other questions, but on behalf of Team McGregor, we believe it's fine. We don't have any health and safety concerns on behalf of our fighter, and certainly happy to answer any other questions about the training regimens of Mr. McGregor relative to it. But certainly are supportive of the request.
Any questions from any commissioners? Mr. Murphy?
What weight do you anticipate that Mr. McGregor will weigh in on fight day?
I anticipate that, well, certainly if Mr. McGregor, I'm sure, will weigh in without a problem on weigh-in day. Mr. McGregor, as we sit here right now, throughout the majority of his training camp, has been about 160 pounds. So I think that's why I'm very confident he won't have any trouble making weight, and I anticipate he'll be right about that, maybe slightly higher than that on the actual fight day.
Thank you.
Okay. Please.
Good morning, Mr. Mersch and Mr. Horner. I just want to confirm, both in the backup material, but I would like you just to confirm on the record that both camps confirm that any risks that are associated with the request, the reduction of the weight size, are being assumed by both camps.
On behalf of Mr. Mayweather, that is correct.
The same for Mr. McGregor, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for these two gentlemen? None? Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room that have an opinion on it, but is anybody, is there anybody that has a qualified opinion that represents the camps that I'm unaware of that would like to speak? Okay, great. At this point, I think I'll close the testimony from the audience and move to the commissioners, and would like to get your perspective on this. Let's have a good dialogue about this. Who would like to start? Go ahead, Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Chairman Marnell. It's a fun time, and it's a neat topic for the entertainment of Nevada to address a topic that's a concern of ours for anything that we do, because we want great entertainment, but we want health and safety of the fighter first and foremost. I wrote a few notes, and I just kind of wanted to cover it because this is really just a conversation among the commissioners where my heart's at dealing with this. Smaller gloves in this particular fight. Smaller gloves in this particular fight, in general, will favor the harder hitting, heavier fighter. In this particular fight, I think it's not going to be as significant of an issue as maybe compared to some other fights or some other fighters that will be fighting along this realm. What is a concern for me, we're talking 2 ounces, and this is for people that are in the fight realm, is that what's the brand of the gloves? Because if we do decide to go ahead and drop to 2 ounces, there's a significant difference between brand of gloves that are out there and actually lot numbers. So you can get an 8-ounce glove that'll weigh 8 ounces, but where is that padding put? They're going by the weight, and how's it going to effectuate the fighting individuals when they're there? So I would recommend, if we do go down to 8, that it's the same brand of gloves and close to the same lot numbers. And I feel real comfortable with we have excellent inspectors that they'll be able to oversee that and mandate that it's the same brand gloves and it's the same weight and the same caliber coming in, because even sometimes with 4-lane gloves, you get one lot, it's a different glove than the other lot, and you're looking at it, it's like, no, this wasn't even though they weigh 8 ounces, they weigh 10 ounces, they're still a different glove as you're coming into them. So that would be a concern, and I'd like the commission to address that if we do decide to drop to a lower amount. As I said before, I think for this particular style fight, and styles make fights, I don't think this is going to be a significant issue on my behalf. I've had about over 20 years of boxing. I'm board certified in ringside medicine, and I've been with our Olympic team a long time, so I feel comfortable making this statement. But as a physician, who's dealt with some serious complications and have had deaths in the past, we always worry about that, and we want to do the best we can for the fighters. But I think these individuals are coming forward, and they're intelligent individuals with what they want to do, and I'm in favor of granting what they would like to move forward with. This has been said before, I think, by the individual before us. This is like a unique time. This is a hybrid fight. It's not a hybrid fight where you're combining MMA and boxing, but it's a hybrid fight where you've had an individual that has never stepped ring in a boxing ring against arguably one of the world's best offensive boxers out there. So it's a unique time. It's going to be a very interesting and entertaining event that's going to take place. Concerning the health and safety of the fighter, the rate limiting factor is the referee. It's not the promoter, it's not the family, it's that referee. And we have A+ referees in Nevada. So I always feel comfortable when our referees are involved that they have the best interest of the fighter involved. So that's the key point that I'd like to address to my fellow commissions. It's actually the referee. Because I've seen many tribes of people in many camps that you think would have the best interest of the fighter, and it's the rate limiting step that the referee can step in. Say this just is too much of a meeting. We have a hurt and we have a tired fighter. We got to call this fight because they're warriors and they're going to fight, to the maximum that they can to take over. We all know recently that an individual passed away a couple months ago. That was an MMA fighter going into the boxing. And again, the rate limiting step are our great Nevada refs that will put a stop before they feel that it gets to such a level. So I'd like to beseech my fellow commissioners. I thank Chairman Anthony Mornell for allowing me to speak. We've talked briefly about this episode. He asked me just to present my thoughts here today. And so for the health and the safety of the fighter, we have 2 individuals that are adults. We have 2 people that wanted to do it. And I think the style of this fight is an entertainment would be warranted. And I think the health and safety of the fighters will be protected by our excellent refs. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carpenter. I hate to put you on the spot, Commissioner Avancino, but I think that your perspective on this and history of this would be very helpful, if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me an opportunity to simply suggest that it is always important, I believe, for this commission to maintain the integrity of our rules as best we can. I think our former director, Mark Ratner, former Attorney General, Mike Mersch, and of course Bob Bennett would agree with that assertion. As the chairman would understand, I would always be reluctant to make an adjustment to a long-standing rule, which, as Mr. Ratner will recall, has been in place since 2006. And it's in place as a result of an advisory committee on health and safety, which was chaired by our highly esteemed former chairman, Sig Rogich, and co-chaired by Dr. Jim Nave. It took them 9 months to give us this advice. And that advice was simply, if you're under 147 pounds, you wear an 8-ounce glove in boxing. And if you are above 147 pounds, you wear a 10-ounce glove. That's the rule for now at least 11 years. However, rules need to be reconsidered from time to time, as I think we all agree. This is a merger of 2 disciplines, unprecedented in my career on this commission, that of boxing and mixed martial arts. In one camp, we have Floyd Mayweather, who at least, help me here, Mr. Ellerby, but at least his 6 previous fights have been fought with an 8-ounce glove.
Yes, sir.
He has worn a 10-ounce glove, but that's been a while back, if I recall. On the other hand, we have, as a result of this mixed discipline now, this kind of crossover combination, a mixed martial artist of great ability who has fought only with a 4-ounce glove, but is willing to make a 100% increase in weight to fight with an 8-ounce glove as well. So it's an unusual contest for us as a commission. And I was reviewing, Mr. Chairman, the actual recommendations of our advisory committee back from 2006. And they said this: given the fact that the committee did not have any scientific proof as to the advantage of one glove size over another, the committee recommends that the commission look at conducting a scientific study on glove size and whether the size of the gloves used makes a difference. Well, as Mr. Ratner knows, I wasn't chairman in 2007 or in 2008, and not again until 2011. So I don't think, Mr. Ratner, that we ever did that scientific study.
That is correct.
So I had something to suggest to the commission, at least for an opportunity of further consideration, is let's not change our long-standing rule. That's the beauty of the law. Precedential value of what we have and what we can rely on. But because this is a merger of these two disciplines, perhaps we could consider a one-fight exception to allow 8 ounces with the understanding that we will conduct this study that we just haven't done yet to determine 11 years later whether this is a rule that's worthy for us. I mean, I'm sure the chairman knows well that we have 4-ounce gloves at every weight class, isn't it, Chair? In mixed martial arts. So this is something that I would go along with. Normally I would say, no, let's not change the rule unless there's a really good reason. I wasn't given really too great a reasons why we should change it, frankly. All due respect, sir. So I think we're going to help with that and suggest that maybe you give, we've done this with other instances, as Mr. Bennett knows, where we can give a one-fight license or a one-fight exception, but only on the basis that we would commit to proceeding with some form of study, someone that you would appoint to have that reviewed and get back to the commission, but keep our rule intact until we actually do that. That's all, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Avancino. It's helpful. I dare ask what box you had to go to and what warehouse or garage to pull out.
It's here. Wasn't easy to find it.
Are there any other comments or questions from other commissioners, or anything they'd like to offer before I put my final thoughts into this? Commissioner Alonso, please.
Thanks, Chairman. I think that both Commissioner Carpenter and Commissioner Avancino provided really valuable information during this deliberation to help all of us get to a decision where we can make a knowledgeable motion or vote. I think that I have, I'm not sure I would say struggled, but I have been challenged with this request initially because, like Commissioner Avancino stated, the integrity of the rules and the guidelines that have been set forth before us are my guideline and roadmap for the future in this position and role. I do feel that I spent my night watching previous Mayweather fights over again, even though I've watched them all previously as a boxing enthusiast, and counted the number of times of 8-ounce gloves versus 10. And I certainly respect that Mr. McGregor normally fights with 4-ounce gloves and is going 100% at 8-ounce, and was prepared when accepting this bout that he would follow the guidelines of boxing and the rules that were created before them. Commissioner Carpenter made an excellent point in that the referee really plays the key role. And I commend Executive Director Bennett for his selection of the referee, because I think Mr. Byrd is an excellent delivery of the understanding of the rules of boxing, and will act accordingly for the public safety of both fighters. And with the reassurance of a 2006 document that I get to, that is right next to me and allows me to review, I feel that I'm more comfortable knowing that there's no scientific proof to the advantage of one glove size or another. And I believe that Commissioner Avancino's recommendation for a one-time consideration with a follow-up that we take the advice that was given to us years ago and request a further study has has valid points.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Morgan, please.
Just a few comments, since I clearly do not have the years of experience as the other commissioners have on my 2 days on this commission. But I want to echo Commissioner Alonso's comments of gratitude to both Dr. Carpenter and Commissioner Evansino to give us some historical background as to how the regulations in the NAC with regard to glove weight came about. I think just based on my review of the background documents for the agenda, there's no other way to define this fight other than unconventional. And seeing, two premier athletes go to fight in this regard is definitely not normal. And I think that the fight itself is not normal. But hearing that two world class athletes have agreed to go to this weight class, or not only the weight class, but the actual weight of the glove, and the lack of scientific evidence, as Commissioner Alonso mentioned, gives me a little bit more comfort to entertain the waiver request for both camps. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, I have not reviewed the bout agreement specifically. I would like to confirm with both camps that this, as usually customary in these fights, that we are dealing with the foam gloves here. We're not dealing with horsehair MX gloves. Is that correct?
Yes, my name's Hunter Campbell. I'm the Executive Vice President and General Counsel for UFC. Just to address your point, Mr. Carpenter, the way that this fight was constructed along with Mr. Ellaby and the Mayweather team and the Zuba team myself, MX style gloves, which are the traditional Mexican horsehair gloves, are prohibited in this fight. Both fighters are required to inspect the other fighter's gloves prior to the event taking place. And both fighters have agreed to wear more traditional, what we'll call American style gloves, where the padding is more significant than the typical Mexican puncher style glove. So I know that was a point to you. I just wanted to address that.
Are you stating it'll be the same brand? Or?
I'm not certain that it'll be the same brand, only to the extent that each fighter, I think, has separate endorsement dealings with separate brands. One of the things, though, that I think that Mr. Ellaby and I can agree on is that we will certainly make sure that the gloves themselves are very similar and comparable. Neither of us have any interest in putting either of our fighters at danger or at risk.
Leonard, are you in agreement with that?
I'm in agreement.
Okay.
Okay. One other question I have: where are the gloves now?
So
are the gloves? I'm sure they're being made, but are they in country yet? Are they like the usual last minute, or where are the sets?
We've been waiting on this determination. We put that on hold to determine whether they're going to be 8 or 10 ounce gloves. Now that we have
So in 10 minutes, somebody's going to be making some gloves really fast. Or both sets are already.
At least a new color, yes.
Well, at least we're not doing this the night before. At least we're a couple days. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm going to make them brief and I'll be succinct with them. As I've gotten originally appointed to this commission and have been here, I have a total respect for the history of this commission. And Commissioner Evansino, you have been so valuable to me over my 3-year tenure here on why things were done, when they were done, and the times in which they were done in. And one thing that you always encouraged me to do as I got here was that it was okay to challenge that. And I think as evidence of your encouragement, along with prior Chairman Aguilar, we challenged many of the things that were here, but we respected the history of what had been put in place by this commission, and we were only challenging it in the vein of making it better or trying to adopt it to the current times. And it seems as in my tenure at this commission, we always are presented with a new opportunity and a new challenge of something that's unique. I think hence the proof in that, from being a general funded agency to a self-funded agency, and rewriting regulations that were 17 years old and modernizing them with all the MMA content that was required, and bringing the public into the process. So that's, I want to just put that on the record with my fellow commissioners, that I think it's important that we're always looking at these regs and these rules from a historical perspective and understanding the history, but asking ourselves, do they make sense for today? So, secondly, we all know that gloves, if you've been involved in and around boxing and the commission for a while, we all know that gloves and the weight of gloves can be distributed in all kinds of different places. The weight can be in the front, the weight can be on the top of the hand, and the weight can be in the wrist. So that, to me, my perspective is while the ounce and the history of the ounces is important to recognize, it's also where is the padding in the glove, and I'll come back to that. I do agree with everything that everybody has said here, that at the end of the day, between the 2 ounces, or in the case of the UFC's evolution, we're now letting all weight classes fight with 4 ounces, that the #1 line of defense in the state of Nevada is a referee. It always has been, and it always will be, and I think that we have the best in the world on that, and we pride ourselves in stopping fights 1 punch early versus 1 punch too late. And we are, no matter what we decide here today, that is still going to be the first line of defense in the health and safety of the fighter. My biggest concern about this consideration or this request that's being made is that I do not like the Nevada State Athletic Commission being used as a pawn in a social media battle. Frankly, between these two, that part of this request, it pisses me off. I'll be really, really honest with you. And I respect the fact that you missed this, and you admitted that in your testimony, that you may have missed this subject when you guys put this bout agreement together. But this body is not the subject of 2 fighters who want to go back and forth like these two have at each other to create social media stir and another controversy for attention to sell tickets and sell direct TV. However, in saying that, I'm willing to put that aside, and I would just caution going forward that this body and this forum not be used for that again. If you cut an agreement, make sure you get it right. When you cut an agreement for this much money, I would expect you get it right, and it works that way going forward. The last thing that I would say in this is if we do approve this, and I would say at this point, I am in favor of the recommendation of Commissioner Avancino for a one-time approval of this. However, I have 2 stipulations to that. Number 1, Executive Director Bennett, myself, and as well as I think Commissioner Carpenter and any other commissioner who would like to be there, that we do as we always do, but this time with a little bit more visibility. And we ourselves, we have been in the middle of these glove issues before, and that we inspect all of these gloves. And what I am concerned about is not the weight. What I am concerned about is that the padding in the front is what it should be. The second stipulation I have to this is that all gloves, all samples that are provided, regardless if they're selected for the bout or not, are turned over to the property as the property of the Nevada Athletic Commission post-fight. And the reason I want that is because these gloves will be the first part of one of our studies in looking at these gloves. And there may be an issue with that because I have some things that I'm not going to talk about today that would go into the study. And as we've looked at gloves in the past, where our inspectors have cut the gloves up, we weighed certain parts of the glove, we look at the contents of the glove. Would that be amenable to both camps if we were to move forward? Or is this, are the gloves that are in the fight something that we can use but we can give back? And that's the reason why I want the alternates and I want the other samples. I know these are a part of history for your fighters and they want them, so I totally respect that. But I would like the alternate set to be used for testing as well as the other ones that are not selected.
That's fine.
Fine with us.
Okay, so
If you could use them and give them back, then keep the sample.
I will give them back to you cut up. The other ones I'm gonna.
Maybe cut up.
The other ones we're gonna annihilate.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. And Executive Director Bennett, do you have anything else to add to what you've heard here today?
For the sake of brevity, Chairman, no. Everything I heard today, I think, is very unique. It's very different, and I do think it's in the best interest of the fighters. And the referee unequivocally makes a big difference in this fight, and that is a specific reason why I chose Mr. Robert Byrd. So thank you for my comments, Chairman.
Okay, great. So I agree that we will talk offline about how to get a study going immediately, and we're going to need to consider now all of the factors, including what we're doing in the UFC, and the weight ounce in the UFC for all the weight classes and how that pertains to this study, and I'm assuming that, as always, the UFC will be very helpful in helping us participating in that study for information.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, great. That's my final comments. I would look, based on the comments that were provided here today by all of the commissioners, I would look for a motion on item number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be happy to make the motion to approve the request for a waiver of our longstanding rule of providing for a 10-ounce glove on any weight class over 147 pounds to a 8-ounce glove, in this case, on a one-time exception only, and subject to three stipulations. One is that the gloves will be inspected personally by our chairman and by our executive director prior to use that evening. And second, that the gloves, both the alternates as well as the originals, will be submitted to the executive director after the fight. And 3, that the commission will, through our chairman and executive director, proceed with the review of conducting a study and review of glove size and whether the size of gloves used makes a difference as to our responsibility of health and safety. Excuse me if that's a windy motion, but that includes most things.
Thank you, Commissioner Avancino. Do I have a second on Commissioner Avancino's motion?
I will second.
Great, I have a motion and I have a second on item number 7. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, motion passes unanimously. Item G, do we have any public comment in the room? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on the phone?
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Do we have any public comment on the phone? Okay, hearing none. We'll close the public comment on the phone.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Item H, the chairman's report. We are going to be very busy for the next 60 days. That's my report. And Executive Director Bennett, we will get together offline and discuss how we would want to get back to the commission expeditiously, and who would want to lead the charge on further research on the glove matter. Are there any matters for future agendas from any of the commissioners? No, sir. None? Great, thank you. All right, then I look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Have a motion? Do I have a second? Great. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.